everybody, and welcome to Mike Nierychlo online, sharing my love for people, wine, food, and all things made passionately. Alright, today's episode, we're carrying on talking about wines from Vancouver Island. Now, if you missed out on last week's episode, you won't be understanding why we're talking about Vancouver Island. Well, I now live on Vancouver Island, actually down in the most southern point in Victoria, beautiful British Columbia. We relocated over here. If you want more details on that, please check out last week's episode. Also, make sure you check out last week's episode because if you don't, you'll be missing out on 3 fantastic Pinot Noirs that you need to try out. Really good, solid wines, good value wines, nice price point, delicious wine. Alright, I chose to start last week on Pinot Noir because Pinot Noir is a grape variety that has really stood the test of time here on Vancouver Island. It's a juicy, delicate grape variety. Tends to carry a nice acidity and works well in a slightly cooler climate like we have here. Vancouver Island is not South Okanagan, it's not California, it's not Australia. It's not super hot here, but it's got a long enough growing season to ripen grapes and to make some really interesting varieties. Hence why I started with Pinot Noir, a nice transparent grape variety that really shows off a great sense of place. Terroir, whatever you want to call it. Today's show, I want to carry on talking about island wines, but on today's show we're carrying on in the Pinot family as well. Today we're talking Pinot Gris from Vancouver Island. Pinot Gris, also a grape variety that's really stood the test of time here. Now, you'd actually be quite hard-pressed to find a winery on Vancouver Island that doesn't produce, well, either one or the other, or both. Pretty much everybody here produces both wine varieties, Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris. Both wines that do extremely well here. And they both tend to produce really juicy, really acidic, food-friendly, approachable, refreshing styles of wine. Kind of wine that I tend to really like, especially in the summer like we're in right now. Today's show, I didn't highlight this last week, fairly long episode, trying to keep this one a little shorter. But today's show, Pinot Gris from the island. I didn't mention that on the island there are 2 main growing areas. So I've selected a wine from either growing area. Now, how can I explain it to you? I'm down here on the most southern point of Vancouver Island, Victoria. If I head up one of the main highways, which veers off a little bit to the west and kind of carries up centrally on the island, you'll hit Duncan, the city of Duncan, which is sitting just outside the Cowichan Valley. Now, Cowichan Valley is kind of what has put the island on the map as far as wine production. You'll find quite a few little wineries up there. I think all the wines I touched on last week were from the Cowichan Valley. Makes really nice wine. It's a really neat area for growing wine. It's in a bit of a microclimate. They call it a rain shadow. Slightly more arid than the rest of the island. Nice long growing season, good heat units. Tends to make a pretty consistent bottle of wine. Now, that's where my first wine is from. The second wine we're tasting today is from a completely different side of the island. Between Duncan, or the Cowichan Valley, and what they call the peninsula, or the area of Saanich or North Saanich, there's a huge kind of ocean inlet that kind of separates the two. So if you're back down in Victoria and you head up kind of the east coast of the island, you're heading up main highway towards the ferry terminals, towards Saanich, towards Sydney. A really neat other wine growing area that's gaining popularity very quickly. Like I said, right between about Saanich and Sydney. There's a lot of wineries located in that area now, or a lot more popping up. What I like about that area is it's even closer to Victoria. Really neat area, good for marketing your wines because you're closer to the city, and also making some pretty good wines. So, let's get right into them. First wine I figure is quite appropriate because of the area. It's called Alderley Vineyards. Have a look at the bottle there. The 2011 Pinot Gris from Alderley. The reason I think this wine is appropriate is because Duncan, city of Duncan, used to be called Alderley. I have no idea when it was called Alderley, but back in the day, Duncan was called Alderley. It's now called Duncan. Anyway, the city right outside the Cowichan Valley. Pinot Gris. I mentioned this on past episodes. Pinot Noir gets its name because the grape is a black grape, or a dark red wine grape. Pinot Noir, noir, the French word for black. Pinot Gris, gris, the French word for gray. Now, gray is kind of the closest color they can use to describe the grapes. But when you see a cluster of Pinot Gris hanging on the vine, they don't look like a white wine grape. They almost look more like a red wine grape. They're a very kind of pinkish, purpley, gray color. Now, for those of you who don't realize this, what gives wine its color? The skin of grapes give wine its color. If you take even the boldest, reddest grape varieties, say Cab Sauv or Shiraz or Zinfandel, and press them off the skin really quickly, you'll get white wine off of it. So, some producers, when they do Pinot Gris, choose to leave it on the skins a little bit longer, which stains the wine. So have a look at this one. It gives a nice kind of pinkish amber hue to it. I think it's really neat. It adds another dimension to the wine. It's a very pretty color for a white wine. Some people would call it a rosé, but no, Pinot Gris is still kind of a white wine. Let's see what Alderley has to offer. It's about a $20 or $22 bottle of Pinot Gris. And it gets me excited. On the nose, this wine's very interesting. Very interesting for Pinot Gris. It's got a lot of citrus aromas. Neat sort of orange peel meets some melon. Orange peel, melon, slightly floral. Maybe some guava, a little bit of that tropical stone fruit aromas. It's another smell that's coming through on this one, which hints at the fact that they probably used a slight oak program on this wine as well, because I'm getting almost a vanilla meets hazelnut smell. I like that. It's very, very, very subtle, which is nice. When you use oak on wine varieties like Pinot Gris, like white wines, you want it to be subtle. You don't want it in your face. It kind of takes away from the fruitiness of the wine. There you go. Right away, nice Pinot Gris. Nice juicy Pinot Gris. Definitely think it was done with an oak program. It's got a nice creaminess through the mid palate. Finishes off with a nice, clean, fairly cutting acidity. I like that. It's juicy. Same sort of flavors come through on the palate. Get a nice kind of, I'm going to go kind of guava meets melon in this wine. A little bit of orange guava melon. Nice wine. I like it. Now, as I keep mentioning, with the wines of the island, they're very acidic, very juicy. These are the kind of wines that work extremely well with food. So today's show, you've probably seen, I got some cheese here in front of me. I wanted to showcase another local producer. This is Natural Pastures Artisan Cheese Company. Have a look at the label there. This is their Courtenay cheddar, kind of an aged, semi-firm cheddar from the area of Courtenay. They make their wine, Courtenay, just outside the Comox area, a lot further up north on the island. Great little artisan producer. Excited to taste some cheese with the wine today. So, let's see what's going on. That's a fun cheese. It's a nice cheese. Simple cheese, approachable. It's cheddar, white cheddar. It's got a nice, slightly aged sharpness to it. Slightly creamy. A little bit of a, almost a bitterness. I like that. Nice. It's got a creaminess though too. Now that creaminess you have with the cheese is what works well with wine like this. I have a sip of that wine. It cuts right through the cheese. Makes the wine come across even fruitier. Delicious, makes your next sip taste even better, which means my next bite of cheese is going to taste even better. It's kind of the way it works with wine and food. All right, next winery I want to showcase. This is the 2011 Symphony Vineyards Pinot Gris. Now, Alderley has been around for quite a long time. I think they kind of opened up in 1992. Symphony has just kind of opened up their current releases. Now they're just getting going, just getting things up to speed. This is their 2011 Pinot Gris. Now this I know, I was by there the other day hanging out with Pat and Lamont, the owners. This is their stainless Pinot Gris. They make two different styles. They make an oak style like this one, and then they make a pure stainless one. When you do it just in stainless, you tend to preserve those really bright acidic notes, those really bright kind of pungent notes. It doesn't get quite as creamy. It stays more juicy. And this wine is a prime example of that. On the nose, you get tons of those citrus aromas, but more on the scale of kind of lemon, lime, apple. Yeah, definitely lemon, lime, Granny Smith apple, tart aromas. I like that. This one, like I said, very juicy, nice acidity to it. It's going to work really well with this cheese from Natural Pastures. Nice wine. What I appreciate about this wine is it's got that racing acidity on the finish, but still to the mid palate. It's got a nice approachable creaminess. It's got a balance to it. Both these wines are satisfying kind of every part of my palate. Get that hints of sweetness up front, mellow, balanced juiciness through the mid palate, nice clean finishing acidity on the end. This one is about a $16 wine. Both really nice examples of the Pinot Gris you can get here on Vancouver Island. So, I hope you learned a little bit more about Vancouver Island today, my new hometown. I'm stoked to share more with you. I also want to showcase some of the surrounding islands, but that's for later episodes. So thank you everybody out there so much for watching today. Another thing about Vancouver Island, it is very depretentiousized over here. What more to say? We'll see you on the next episode.